Everything you're about to hear is just my assessment. It's my opinion, and not to be taken as fact.
Thorough, blunt, and condemning assessment of the August 5th, 2025 Mega Maniacs episode. Short version. Robin Torgrimson did exactly the hard thing every institution of power dreads. She documented a pattern of willful neglect, financial sleight of hand, labor exploitation, and cover-ups, then put that documentation in public view. The August 5th, 2025 Mega Maniacs episode. Toxic truths, black mold updates, corruption, and bombshell resignations is not a church gossip hour. It is an evidence-driven, boots-on-the-ground indictment of how Valor Christian College, VCC, and World Harvest Church, WHC, operate when their reputation is at risk. If you care about student safety, decent labor practices, transparency, or what it means to call something ministry, this episode should terrify you, and it should mobilize you. In a moment, we will unpack everything Robin presented, piece by piece, and be brutally clear about what it reveals. I'll make legal, moral, and scriptural observations where appropriate, and we'll finish with concrete steps that ought to be taken immediately based on the material Robin presented in the episode. Executive summary. The headline truths from the episode and the sworn affidavit Robin read, the strongest, most defensible conclusions are: 1. Students were exposed to hazardous black mold, and the institution's response was primarily cosmetic, painting, air purifiers, rather than professional remediation. That response endangered health and prioritized optics over safety. 2. Leadership failed in duty. President Scott Camp's absence, his reportedly half-hearted apology tour, and evidence that he lacked real authority over certain institutional decisions point to either cowardice, impotence, or complicity. 3. A notarized affidavit from an insider, David Baumgardner, alleges bait and switch hiring, labor exploitation, significant financial manipulation, and institutional knowledge of sexual misconduct allegations. Because this is sworn, it rises above idle rumor. It demands to be investigated. 4. There is a consistent pattern of protecting insiders and minimizing scandal. Whether the subject is sexual misconduct, questionable hires, or messy finances, the response pattern is hush, shift, minimize, and protect. 5. Multiple accountability mechanisms appear to have been sidestepped or subverted, from internal policy, the student handbook, to external structures, accreditation, basic nonprofit fiduciary norms. If any of the above seems new or shocking, read it again. That's the entire point of Robin's episode. She did not whisper, she documented. First, black mold. Toxic, avoidable, and shamefully mishandled. What Robin presented. Video of dorm bathroom areas with mold. Intertext superficial walkthrough. One technician, no instruments used. The college doing cleanup and cosmetic caulking, painting in advance of the inspection. Installation of active pure, AP 500 wall units, air purifiers, that was correctly noted do not remediate mold growing inside walls. Reports of students hospitalized or suffering symptoms. Calls to the local health department and the Ohio Department of Labor that were seemingly being ignored or sent to voicemail. Why this matters, bluntly, this is a health emergency, not a public relations problem. When you have black mold in dormitories, you have a recognized hazard that requires licensed remediation. Painting it over or installing gimmicky purifiers is not just incompetent, it's reckless. Students live there, students breathe that air. The sequence of events looks like concealment. Cleanup's time to prepare for a technician visit, one-person inspections with no testing equipment, and a reflexive emphasis on cosmetic fixes are classic cover-up moves. They're not neutral mistakes. They are actions that protect the institution's image at the expense of people's lungs. Duty of care is being abandoned. Any institution that houses students must prioritize safe conditions. The episode shows an entire apparatus behaving as if optics trump human health. Concrete implications, legal and practical, as suggested in the episode. The health department and labor authorities need to perform surprise, unannounced inspections using proper testing equipment. Students who were harmed should be documented and assisted, and the institution should be required to pay for medical evaluations and remediation if it is shown the environment caused harm. The college's cosmetic approach is inadequate. Licensed mold remediation must be demanded and verified. Second, The vanishing president, leadership that looks good in a photo op and nowhere else. What Robin presented. Scott Camp was reportedly absent from campus during critical moments. The desk of the president communications that went out when he wasn't present, and an apology tour that produced no plan or measurable corrective action. According to the affidavit, Camp himself lamented not having real administrative authority. He claimed the board made decisions without him. Why this matters are, bluntly, a president whose presence is theatrical rather than functional is leadership in name only. If Camp truly lacked authority, that reveals an institutional design where key decisions are made elsewhere by actors who may not be accountable to the college community. When a leader is either unwilling or unable to remedy life and death problems, mold, student safety, alleged sexual misconduct, they are complicit in the harm whether through action or inaction. Calling it not having the heart to kick someone out when a possible assault occurred is moral failure. It is also a poor attempt at PR cover. Concrete implications. If Camp was kept from exercising authority by trustees appointed by the church chancellor, that chain of control must be made public. Accountability is impossible without transparency about who actually makes decisions. Third, the Baumgardner affidavit, the single most damning piece in the episode. What Robin presented, a notarized affidavit, August 3rd, 2025, from David Baumgardner, a former staffer, containing multiple allegations. He was offered a chief of staff role, but given a low-paying recruitment job and charged for dorm housing, bait and switch. He did large amounts of unpaid work, including research for the president's dissertation. He was paid cash for some work, $1,500 over 3 months. He heard from numerous students and sources about Ashton Parsley's alleged sexual involvement with students. Camp allegedly called Ashton a problem. He uncovered financial machinations. A warehouse property mortgage moved onto Valor's books without Camp's knowledge, saddling the college with $9,000 a month for an unusable building. He describes an unreported non-consensual same-sex encounter among students that was not referred to police and was handled internally with minimal discipline. Why this matters? Bluntly and carefully, this is sworn testimony. The fact that it is notarized and recent increases its weight. It's not social media trash. It's a legal document that can and should be pursued by investigators. Multiple serious allegations are in one hand. Employment abuse, unpaid labor, hush practices, questionable hires, financial shuffling, and student safety all show up in this affidavit, making it hard to pretend these are isolated incidents. They form an interlocking network of mismanagement. If even a portion of this is accurate, the institution is legally and morally compromised. The bait and switch employment and unpaid work allegations point at labor exploitation. The cash payments raise questions about payroll practices and taxes. The financial transaction, warehouse, raises governance and fiduciary questions. The unreported assault claims raise both criminal and civil concerns. Concrete implications. The affidavit should be handed to appropriate authorities, Health Department, Labor Department, accreditation body, possibly the Attorney General, for independent review. The college should be compelled to release financial records related to the warehouse transaction and any related party deals with World Harvest Church. Survivors mentioned or implied in the affidavit deserve immediate legal and pastoral support, done through an independent victim advocate, not the institution's own internal chain. Fourth, sexual misconduct, a predictable pattern of protection. What Robin presented, multiple references. Students alleging Ashton Parsley's sexual involvement with students. Reports that leadership knew about these allegations. An underage intern, Lily, inhaling mold spores and being allegedly mishandled. And a same-sex non-consensual incident that the president reportedly would not punish because I don't have the heart to kick her out. Why this matters? Bluntly, when allegations of sexual impropriety involve leadership's family members or close insiders, institutions commonly close ranks. The episode shows exactly that dynamic. Information is known internally, yet not acted on appropriately. Victim protection seems absent. The alleged denials of medical help, the silencing, interrogation of victims, and bans on students who try to raise concerns are classic steps to protect the institution and its allies. Whether or not VCC is subject to Title IX processes, the moral obligation to protect students is non-negotiable. The episode itself references the college handbook and its Title IX mention, which is evidence that the institution recognizes legal standards even if it fails to follow them. Concrete implications. Every credible allegation should be investigated by an independent third party with victim survivor protections in place. The practice of internal-only discipline must be replaced with transparent, legally compliant processes. Students who have been punished or banned while trying to raise legitimate safety concerns should be reevaluated, and any punitive actions rescinded if they were retaliatory. Fifth, financial mismanagement and related party shenanigans. Money moving like a shell game. What Robin presented, a board decision allegedly without the president's knowledge, that sold WHC property, the warehouse, to Valor and then had Valor carry a $9,000 a month mortgage for a building it couldn't use, effectively moving WHC liabilities onto the college. Why this matters? Bluntly, this is textbook related party transaction risk. When a church and a college, it controls trade property and liabilities, it must be done transparently, at fair market value, and with clear governance. The episode indicates none of that transparency occurred. The likely motive is simple and cynical: improve WHC's books or hide liabilities, while offloading costs onto a weaker entity, Valor, i.e., shifting pain to a subsidiary that may be politically weaker and less able to resist. Consequences are real. Improper financial manipulations can jeopardize accreditation, invite IRS scrutiny for nonprofits, and harm donors, creditors, and students. Concrete implications. An independent forensic audit of transactions between WHC and VCC must be commissioned and made public to donors and the accrediting body. If irregularities are found, board members and officers responsible must be held accountable. Sixth, labor exploitation, bait and switch hires, unpaid labor, NDAs. What Robin presented via the affidavit. People were recruited with promises, title, pay, housing, and then given inferior roles and lower pay. Individuals forced to sign NDAs and non-compete clauses, significant uncompensated work for institutional projects, cash payments in lieu of regular payroll. Why this matters may bluntly, exploitation disguised as ministry is still exploitation. You can't hide wage theft behind a theology. The episode shows young people moved across states and then told their role, pay is different. Classic bait and switch. NDAs and non-competes in a church/college context smell like gag orders. When an institution has systemic problems, NDAs are too often used to prevent disclosure rather than to protect legitimate trade secrets. Cash payments and unpaid hours create legal exposure. These raise the specter of labor law violations and potential whistleblower retaliation claims. Concrete implications. Labor authorities should examine the college's payroll and contracting practices. Any NDAs used to silence reports of wrongdoing should be reviewed and, if used to cover abuse, rendered unenforceable. Former and current employees should be informed of their rights and connected with lawful counsel. And seventh, institutional dynamics of silencing and intimidation. What Robin presented, she and others have been banned from the property. A student, Nathan, was reportedly detained by asset protection when trying to pick up a final check. Phone calls to inspectors were allegedly sent to voicemail. The college appears to control the narrative aggressively. Why this matters, bluntly. Banning journalists, whistleblowers, and concerned students is not leadership. It's intimidation. Institutions that respond to oversight with bans disclose their priorities plainly, protect the brand, not the people. When security forces are used to detain or intimidate truth-tellers, legal questions arise. The line between private security and unlawful detainment is thin, and the episode suggests crossing that line was possible. Concrete implications. Any use of private security to interfere with legitimate reporting or whistleblowing should be investigated by law enforcement. Ban decisions should be reviewed in light of potential retaliation claims. Eighth, biblical and moral indictment. The church language that compounds the betrayal. What Robin used. Luke 11:39. You Pharisees clean the outside of the cup. Proverbs 3:18/31:8 references to speaking for the voiceless. Why this matters, bluntly. There's a special moral calculus for institutions that call themselves Christian. If you preach shepherding and protect wolves instead, the betrayal is deeper. It is spiritual hypocrisy amplified by institutional power. Scriptural standards for leaders. 1 Timothy 3, Titus 1, emphasize moral rectitude, transparent stewardship, and protection of the vulnerable. The episode shows behaviors antithetical to those standards. That's not just governance failure, it's theological contradiction. Concrete implications: moral, not legal. Leaders who fail to protect must resign or be removed. Repentance alone is insufficient without structural reform. The church's moral credibility is at stake. Donors, alumni, and partners have a right to demand transparent repentance and corrective action. Ninth, action plan. What must happen next? In plain, uncompromising terms. Robin's episode should not be a momentary scandal that dies in a news cycle. Here is the minimum public action list that must follow. 1. Independent health and safety remediation now. The health department should direct immediate licensed mold remediation, followed by third-party air and surface testing. Students must be temporarily relocated if contamination persists. Second, forensic financial audit. An independent audit of WHC-VCC transactions, warehouse deal, and any related party dealings should be started immediately and results released to donors, creditors, and the accreditor. Third, labor and payroll review. State labor authorities should examine wage, payroll, housing charges, and the use of cash payments. Fourth, independent investigation of sexual misconduct allegations. An external investigator with experience in campus sexual misconduct must be retained and given full access to witnesses and records. 5. Accreditor and regulatory notifications. The Association of Biblical Higher Education, ABHE, mentioned in the episode, and any relevant state or federal oversight bodies, depending on financial ties to federal funds, should be notified and provided with the affidavit and evidence. 6th, victim support and protections. Establish an independent victim advocate office that's outside WHCVCC. Provide medical legal support and suspend retaliation policies. 7. Immediate transparency measures. Publish the names of trustees, disclose ownership lease arrangements for key properties, and release board minutes related to major financial transactions. 8. Donor and partner pause. Donors and institutional partners should pause giving until tangible steps are taken. This is not punitive for victims. It's leverage for accountability. 9. Leadership accountability. If investigations substantiate the claims, those responsible, especially any who knowingly protected predators, engaged in financial misreporting, or endangered student health, must resign or be removed. 10th, final moral judgment. No sugarcoating. Robin did what whistleblowers are supposed to do. She gathered evidence, corroborated claims, and gave voice to the people the system was ignoring. This episode is not the work of a vengeful rumor monger. It is the work of an investigator who assembled a large pile of corroborating evidence and then turned the lights on. The verdict, in plain terms, the August 5th episode paints a picture of an institution that has prioritized self-preservation over human safety, financial transparency, labor decency, and moral responsibility. The acts described: painting over black mold, using air purifiers as a PR bandage, paying people under the table, shuffling liabilities between church and college, failing to discipline or even investigate sexual misconduct allegations, amount to systemic institutional failure. At worst, they are criminally negligent and morally depraved. At best, they're incompetently corrupt. If you are part of this community and you want to claim some moral high ground for ministry, you cannot do so while these protections remain in place. If you are a donor, an alumnus, a parent, or a concerned citizen, demand answers. If you are a student or former staffer who's been hurt, find legal counsel and reach out to advocates. And if you need help connecting to resources, Robin is offering help. Accept it. Robin is doing the right, brave thing. The church and college leadership must be forced into sunlight, and they must reckon with what has been done in their name. Anything less is not reform, it's complicity. The Mega Maniacs episode lays bare a staggering betrayal of trust, and at the heart of this rot stands Rod Parsley and his daughter, Ashton Parsley. Rod Parsley, as the patriarch and spiritual figurehead of World Harvest Church and its affiliated institutions, carries an enormous responsibility to exemplify godly leadership, integrity, and accountability. Yet the evidence exposed shows a man who has either willfully ignored, enabled, or actively participated in a system that exploits young people, conceals dangerous health hazards, and protects predators, including, by all indications, his own daughter. Ashton Parsley's alleged sexual misconduct with students is not merely a personal failing, it is a symptom of a toxic culture cultivated under her father's watch. When leadership not only fails to investigate, but instead reportedly calls her a problem and shields her from accountability, it reveals a depraved prioritization of family loyalty and institutional reputation over justice, safety, and biblical morality. This is not shepherding. It is shepherding wolves to prey upon the vulnerable. Rod Parsley's silence, inaction, or complicity is inexcusable. As a self-proclaimed man of God and leader, his duty was to protect students and staff from harm, uphold transparent stewardship, and model repentance and righteousness. Instead, the cover-ups, financial manipulations, and labor abuses revealed under his tenure expose him as a chief architect of a corrupt, abusive regime cloaked in religious rhetoric. This is hypocrisy in its ugliest form, preaching holiness while permitting and perhaps facilitating sin, exploitation, and suffering. No amount of prayer meetings, apology tours, or hollow platitudes can wash away this stain. The Mega Maniacs episode demands not only exposure, but justice. Rod Parsley and Ashton Parsley must be held fully accountable, morally, legally, and spiritually. Their continued leadership or influence over any institution that claims to be Christian is a profound scandal and an affront to every principle of faithfulness, truth, and human dignity. The community, donors, and all who value true ministry must reject their authority and insist on full transparency, restitution, and reform. To tolerate Rod and Ashton Parsley's presence in any leadership capacity after these revelations is to become complicit in their betrayal and to condone a culture of abuse and cover-up that grinds the innocent underfoot. The Mega Maniacs episode is a call to reckoning, and it is past time that Rod Parsley and Ashton Parsley answer for the deep wounds inflicted under their watch.